Hello, Hymn of the Week friends. It's good to be with you again this week as we look into another song and some scriptures, share these few minutes together that have become so meaningful for us. It's a regular rhythm of coming together on this weekly basis to hear the word, to hear some music that touches our hearts, and in the process allow the Spirit of God to touch us and shape us and mold us more into the likeness of Jesus. Well, every Christmas we have this season called Advent, where we spend a number of weeks looking ahead to the Christmas event. We're not in the season of Christmas now. I haven't got my dates mixed up. But we are, as Pastor Harry is going to just briefly mention, in the season of Lent. And it's kind of like the Advent for Easter. And so over the next number of weeks, we're going to be journeying towards the cross, this high point of our faith, the cross, and of course, the resurrection ultimately. I have two scriptures today to read that begin us on our journey toward the cross. The first one is from Hebrews chapter 12, and the second one will be from 1 Peter chapter 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And now, 1 Peter 2, starting in verse 21. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. When they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. For you were like sheep going astray, but now you have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Let's listen to Pastor Harry for this week's Hymn of the Week.
Our hymn of the week is an old favorite, The Old Rugged Cross. The author and composer, George Bennard. With the season of Lent, we begin our journey with Jesus to the cross. The Gospel of Mark chapter 8 reads, Jesus then began to teach his disciples that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. This marked the beginning of their journey to the cross. 2,000 years separate us from that journey. Our journey, however, is a spiritual journey in which we can all participate by retracing their journey. It's a journey of faith, and we can all take part beginning right now and from wherever we are at this point in our lives. The spiritual lessons they learned then are transferable to us on our journey to the cross. During these next 6 weeks, we will make this journey through hymns. We begin our journey with an old favorite, The Old Rugged Cross, by George Bennard, both author and composer of this hymn. George Bennard was born February 4th, 1873, in the industrial city of Youngstown, Ohio. His father was a miner who worked the coal pits of Ohio. But his sudden passing in 1889 meant that 16-year-old George was also by necessity, became a coal miner in order to support his mother and sisters. After his marriage, George and his wife became active members of the Salvation Army, where they served as officers. His aspiration, however, from his youth was to become an evangelist, using both his musical and preaching gifts. He and his wife became Methodists, and he was ordained a Methodist minister. He traveled extensively as a song leader and evangelist, both in the US and Canada. He composed the music first, and then wrote the lyrics to the hymn, The Old Rugged Cross, in 1913. It was written at a time of spiritual struggle. It was the onset of more liberal theologies, and he was forced to evaluate and to confirm the tenets of his own faith. He wrote, "The more I contemplated these truths, the more convinced I became that the cross was far more than just a religious symbol, but rather the very heart of the gospel." After completing the hymn, George Bennard sent a manuscript to Charles Gabriel, a well-known gospel hymn writer. His response turned out to be somewhat prophetic. He wrote, "You will certainly hear from this song, Mr. Bennard." I've taken our theme, the distant cross, from the first line of the hymn. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross. The cross is distant in terms of location. Few of us will ever return to that original site. It's also distant in time, becoming more so with each turn of a calendar page. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we've heard a great deal about distancing, which is relational. Distancing from the cross is often a gradual drift in which the cross loses its reality, significance, and relevance. Our journey to the cross is a deliberate choice to once again focus our hearts, our thoughts, our love and affections on Jesus, who suffered and died for us. The hymns of this journey will take us toward the cross, before the cross, beneath the cross, on the cross, and beyond the cross. Our passages of the week were chosen as a kind of send-off on our journey. Hebrews 12:2 clearly sets direction for this journey when he writes, "Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." We fix our eyes on Jesus. As he goes before, we will follow. 1 Peter 2:21 assures us of our eventual arrival at the cross. To this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving an example that you should follow in his steps. To follow in his steps brings us ever nearer to the cross. Listen to the words and music of this hymn as presented by Helen, Steve Klassen, and Kerry Dyck. The Old Rugged Cross by George Bennard, our hymn of the week.
cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left his glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true, its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to a home far away, where his glory